7 o'clock, and we'll start off. I'd like to say that we are withdrawing one of the topics on the agenda, 5A, and we're referring that to the HR Division of Administration to look into that. It's a personnel matter, and it's not appropriate for us to be discussing that at this particular time. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is to reverse items 9 and 10. The chair's report will come before the superintendent's report. That's just because I want to make something clear before we get into what the superintendent will be talking about. Any other changes on the agenda that people would like to bring up? If not, we'll move ahead then. The first item on the agenda is public comments. Yes?
Hi, my name is Lori Ballmer. I'm a resident of Bennington, and I have a couple of questions for the board. Well, one question I'm presenting the board with something. The question I had is on the warrants, there's a breakout of items called chittenden checks. And I haven't seen that before, and I was just curious, is it a change in formatting or procedure? But also, and I was just very curious, there was a board member's, a check made out to a board member, and I'm curious what the board member might have received a check for. And so I'm not sure, I don't see.
We don't have our business manager here with a
Right.
full listing of things, but we'll get back to you on those two issues.
Okay. The other thing is here, I am presenting the board, the original will go to the board chair. It is a request that has been made before, and it's made again for a total cost of the legal fees incurred by the
Yes,
MAU.
we will be discussing that. That is in the hands of our attorney. And the plaintiffs in that situation will be, all information will be directed to them through our attorney.
Well, as taxpayers, there is a public records law.
Yes.
And we also have access to those records.
Right?
Regardless of whether we're involved in a legal dispute or not. And so as someone who is allowed access to that, I'm requesting those records once again. Thank you.
Very good. We can move on then. We can move on then. Excuse me, yes.
I have a comment to make. On November 7th, you're going to be asked to vote on Act 46. I'm hoping enough people won't vote for it, but I'm not telling them not to, but I'm definitely not going to vote for it. I would rather have the state come down and do their thing, because we keep hearing the threats, the state's going to come down and do it for you. I want them to. The state's never followed through on anything to begin with. And I think if they come down and see what we have, we're doing 85% of the consolidation pieces as it is as of right now anyway. So I can't imagine, that they're going to change too much of it. But my point being is I want the state to be accountable, and I want them to be responsible. Never mind having the board members take the hits on this stuff, because I can remember at a town meeting in Shasberry, they had the unfunded mandate that came through, and it was like $100,000. And at the town meeting, because they told us it was law, and at the town meeting said, and I remember Alice Miller getting up saying, well, you people voted for it. Yes, because they told us we had to do that. I want the state to come down, and let's see what they're going to do, because I really don't think they're going to do a heck of a lot. And hopefully this goes down on the 7th, but we'll see.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Are there any, excuse me, are there any other public comments? If there are not, we'll move on then through the agenda. We go to the presentation. I'm not sure how we're going to do this. Are we all set up?
Yes.
Okay. Would you just introduce yourselves so
Yes,
that
we
people
will.
know who you are?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Donna Leaf. I am the Assistant Superintendent, and I'm here tonight with Laura Boudreau, who is our Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, and also our interim principal of the high school. So she's been busy lately. We also have Tim Payne, who is the principal of the middle school, and we are just able to be with you tonight, and we appreciate your time to offer you a report, summary summary of the performance of the Mount Anthony Union School District. So we have a presentation for you. Tim is passing that out for you. We have some copies also for our audience members. Yeah, good? Okay. And so I'm just going to introduce this. I think that Laura and Tim really have most of this. But I wanted to just begin by saying that we wanted to offer this to you under the umbrella of what are we doing as an SVSU to help all of our schools. So I think you have this with her. Are you looking for me?
It's right there. Is that it? No.
Ooh.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
So all of what we do is really from the Every Student Succeeds Act that the state of Vermont has implemented. They are still in the process of submitting Vermont's version of the Every Student Succeeds Act. So they're still working on implementing some pieces of it, like the science assessment that they're going to implement in a pilot way at the end of this year, and a few other details that they are working out with the federal government on how they are going to prioritize support for the most vulnerable Vermont students, prepare students as members of our Vermont economy, and also to really look at proposals that will be affordable to implement and maintain. So those are sort of the guidelines that we work under for our school improvement planning. We also have a continuous improvement plan each year. The state has just recently given us a new format to do that, and this year we will be creating continuous improvement plans for every school that are a consistent format. We have developed one for the SVSU, and Mr. Payne and his team in the middle school have also forged ahead and created their continuous improvement plan partially to implement a wonderful grant they have for school improvement. And as part of those continuous improvement plans, we focus on our educational quality standards, and we have been doing that in many ways throughout the past 3 years, since 2014. And we use data-informed decision-making to really look closely at our student assessments, and so this is a very important moment for us each year. And we look to support our most vulnerable students, and many of the ways that we do it are with very comprehensive systems, and including some resources that are offered to all of the schools, like our data coach and our math coach, to help improve instructional strategies to meet our Common Core standards.
So as we continue to move in with our district overview, it's that we're all working together to meet the needs of all of our students. This is a reminder that all of our schools are required to have a multi-tiered system of support that's balanced between academics, behavior, and social-emotional learning. And through the lens of Act 77, we're developing our Tier 1 system and using an educational support team to problem solve when we need to support individual students. So this year, we're providing you with SBAC, Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium data. All of grades 3 through 8 and 11 took the Smarter Balance last year. The scores were released recently. As a whole, we've been advised, so we're showing you the district perspective for math. We've been advised by Rebecca Holcomb that we shouldn't review results in a comparative model, but to focus on the performance of each school in the SVSU and look at our strengths and challenges. This is the most important use of this of these assessments to improve student achievement, and Mr. Payne and I will be highlighting that as we move forward. So this is an overview of the math, and this is an overview of our district-wide ELA data.
Just want to make sure everybody understands. You see there are two graphics. On the top one, you're going across, you're going to see mostly elementary. The smaller box on the bottom is the middle school and high school broken out.
So, as the state of Vermont finalizes their accountability system, we have been advised that we're we're pretty sure that graduation rate is going to be part of the accountability system. And so the state has provided, and I will pass it out because it's new to all of us. So the state has provided us some guidance that we're just starting to learn how to use. The most current data that the state can provide us on the Agency of Education website is from 2015-2016. The glossary that we're giving you is to help you interpret this particular chart. We also give a letter that recognizes the four-year cohort graduation rate of 84.47%. So another data point that we have been advised that's probably going to be a part of our local accountability system is the attendance data. So this is a summary that gives you, you all receive an attendance report monthly, and this just gives you a district summary from the 2016-2017 school year of what that attendance rate looks like. So as a district, we're responsible to have a continuous improvement plan for which all of our buildings will now build their continuous improvement plan. And we would like to share what are the big goals in the district-wide plan. So goal 1 is about leadership routines and systems. We have a district leadership team, and our district leadership team works together to look at our district leadership team looked at data to create our plan. All continuous improvement plans have to be based on data. So we worked as a team to develop our plan based on our data. We also review data together as a team to support each school in celebrating strengths and identifying challenges. Goal 2 is about tiered instruction. A great example is, again, our district leadership team looks at our district data, and this year we noticed that one area that we would like to work on as a group is to support 5th grade math. I think you noticed that a few slides back. Our district data coach, Pat Conway, and our district data coach, Melissa Senecal, and our math coach, Pat Conway, are working together with principals they've created an ongoing embedded professional learning for teachers that happens during the school day and throughout the school year. Another example is demonstrated through Pat Conway's targeted math instruction with teachers to look at data, to do an item analysis, and then create action plans with teachers that then she can go back and follow up and look at data again and then celebrate when they see growth. Goal 3 is about professional learning, and this year we are, based on our data, we did a year-long needs assessment last year with The Hill, who is now spending some time in our district, and through that needs assessment that was district-wide, we walked away with action steps, one of which is to provide a K-1 professional learning opportunity for our kindergarten and our first grade teachers this year. And as well as at the middle school, they have 25 teachers that have just started a year-long literacy training with The Hill to look at Tier 1 first instruction. Goal 4 is about assessment, and this year our data coach, Melissa Senecal, is spending lots of time supporting schools and leadership teams and looking at data all together, looking at attendance, looking at academic data and social emotional data, all at the same time through our very brand new SVSU dashboard. So goal 5 is all about family engagement, and Mr. Payne and I have been tag teaming and holding parent nights because we are shifting to a standards-based grading system, and a great example is inviting parents to come in and work with us to learn about that shift and supporting them in understanding what the system looks like. And the SVSU's final goal is goal 6, which is all about high quality staffing. And this year there is a focus on supporting our new teachers. We have an active mentor-mentee program, and then we offer a monthly mentee program that was held last night, and we had 13 new teachers that came. And it's a support network for them, but we also provide them with instructional support and support in social emotional learning. We're also revisiting the district's supervision and evaluation tool. Mr. Payne.
So as we move through the presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about goals. We're going to break them out by the middle school and the high school. Talk about goals from last year, which is what we'll start with right now. We'll show you how kids did through our latest assessments, and then we're going to set some goals for the coming year. So when we did this presentation last fall, we set the goal for the school year that students in the grades 6 through 8 would be assessed in 2 different ways. One is the SBAC, which is this once a year standardized test across the state. It measures proficiency, the percentage of students who are proficient in that area, whether it be ELA or whether it be mathematics. The other assessment that we use as a district is what is called MAP, or the Measures of Academic Progress. This is in the middle school. This assessment is given in the fall, the winter, and the spring. And what it allows you to do is see growth in a student over an instructional block of time. And what we wanted to do when we talked about this last spring, we want to see an average growth rate of somewhere between 2 and 5% in both math and ELA and MAP. And for the SBAC, we set a percentage. We wanted to see between 32 and 35% of our students grades 6 through 8 proficient in math, and raise that a little bit, 35 to 38% in ELA. So this first piece of data that we're going to share with you, this is to MAP. This shows you the average growth rate for the building, grades 6 through 8. It's a consecutive years going from left to right. So you have MAP growth rate 2014 through 2017. Obviously, this is a different group of kids in each year they're taking a snapshot of. But the positive is you can see the percentage is going up over time to 2.5. The reading is then the second half, or to the right of the data. You'll see it's 2014 through 2017. There are some challenges here. You can see that the number went up the previous year, but it has gone back down this most recent year. That's a concern for us. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we talk about action steps and why we applied for, received, and are now working with a literacy coach through a school improvement grant.
Do you want us to hold questions until later, or?
Yeah, can we do it right at the end? Let's do it at the
Would
end.
that be all right?
Sure.
Okay. The SBAC data, so this is the standardized test. This is the test that students take in the early part of spring. It's ELA and mathematics. What we're showing you right here is math. And it is grades 6, 7, and 8 going from left to right. The blue column is the state average. The red is the middle school. So, math is, again, moving in the right direction. We also recognize that this is, these are 3 separate cohorts of kiddos. One thing to note, and I'm sure Laura will talk about it too, the state average dropped this year, and that was a recognized trend nationally and at the state level.
For anyone that was in SBAC.
So if you took SBAC as your one standardized test, you saw state averages across the country drop. Laura can speak to a little bit more about their hypothesis as to why. But a positive from this is you can see over time that more and more kids are becoming proficient as they move through the middle school. This is ELA. Again, you can see that the number is kind of hovering, which is a concern. We're going to talk more about that in action steps. What is the struggle for us? What do we identify as what we need to do to improve our instruction so that more kids are proficient in the area of literacy, which is reading and writing?
I know you wanted to hold questions, but the state numbers there, are they using the same tests that we're using
It is.
to arrive at that percentage?
Yep. It's a standardized test across the state.
Thank you.
So this year, for goals, and these goals will apply to both mathematics and to ELA. This year for the math, we would again like to see a 2 to 5% increase in students' math and reading scores. MAP, the NWEA is an organization that provides the MAP test for us, and they consider 2 to 5% average growth for a student in a school year. Now, obviously, you'll have kids who are above that, which is great, but what we'd like to see is an overall average of our kids between 2 and 5%. As far as the SBAC, the number as far as percentage proficient, trying to push ourselves a little bit there. 30 to 33% in math, 37 to 40% in English, or in the ELA measure for that when we take this test. The MAP test, we've already taken it the first week of October. We'll take it again in January, and then we'll take the last one in June. The SBAC will be obviously a one test, and that'll be in the later winter, early spring of 2018 for us. So some action steps. So as Dr. Lee mentioned, we applied for and received a school improvement grant from the state of Vermont the spring of 2017. It's a 4.5-year commitment on the part of the state. It allows us to do a number of things, and what we've chosen to do in this school year is we have contracted with an organization called The Hill. They specialize in middle school and high school improvement in literacy. We're working closely with an instructor named Diana Malkin. She was in this space yesterday, all day. She observed classrooms. She has helped us organize the literacy leadership team, making a plan for the whole school. And then from 2:30 to 4:30, she has a cohort of 25 teachers, administrators in this space, and she will lead us through a course over the course of the school year. Her primary mission, and she said this to us yesterday, is to improve classroom instruction. Clearly, you can see from the data that we have our challenges. 33% kids proficient in ELA, that's a challenge for us, and we need to improve that. And she's been very good for us. I think she speaks plainly, she's supportive, very knowledgeable, but was very clear with the faculty yesterday that you can't simply say to a kid that's not reading and writing at the grade level, you need to go down the hallway and someone's going to teach you how to read. That's a responsibility of every teacher in the building. And so the 25 is a pretty good cross-section of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade instructors, and almost all subject areas are represented in that cohort, and she has been very clear about that. The language around Tier 2 and Tier 3, this is small group and then individual interventions for your kiddos who are really far behind or who really struggle to read, and you have to give them extra time and specific help to help them close the gap. While they are still being exposed to the standards at grade level, otherwise proficiency rate's never going to go up in the middle school. The other piece, we have many initiatives in the building. The other piece, Laura's talked about this already, is proficiency-based learning that the state expects us to be working on. We continue to be, I think, leaders in PLP development in the state. Middle school students were invited to present their PLPs at a Castleton conference over the summer. We got very good feedback about that. But we're also piloting a proficiency-based report card in the 7th grade this year, which will be adopted in the 7th and the 8th grade the following year. And that links to what Laura was talking about, our parent evenings, trying to explain to folks, what does this mean? You're going to get a report card that looks different than what you've seen before. I don't want to alarm people. If you've had students go through the elementary schools, if you have a student in the 6th grade, I do here, and a 6th grader, this report card won't look different in that its style of breaking out standards by the subject area and giving you, where your student is at that point and moving away from the traditional numerical numbers. And then lastly, Dr. Lee talked about continuous improvement plan. That is an expectation of the state of Vermont at the district level. The middle school has completed its initial improvement plan. That was part of our application to the school improvement grant. We will be moving on to fulfill what they call phase 2, and we will be working with the state as part of our improvement grant to develop that as we go forward.
So the high school last year had 2 goals. One was to work towards 95% participation rate with measures of academic process, which is an internal assessment tool that we use to benchmark. And the second goal then was looking at a proficiency rate between 28% and 31% for students in grade 11 in math and 45 to 48 in English Language Arts, measured by the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. So this is the spring 2017, and you can see we're at 34%. And you can also see this is our ELA, and again, the high school is at 54%, right, covering with the state average. The other goal that I referenced earlier was about MAP participation rate. The high school last year had a wonderful team that worked together to create the multi-tiered system of support that has an assessment component to it. They had trainings from MAP, NWEA, and through that training and learning about best practice, they've decided to look at winter-to-winter data because of block scheduling. They felt like that was going to be the best use. So we're looking forward to our winter benchmark when we can look at that piece. So moving forward, so you'll see a blank there, and I'll explain why, because you don't have a blank on your paper, and it's a very interesting why. So again, we're continuing to collect really good data on 9th and 10th grade that we can use to drive next steps for instruction at the high school in a multi-tiered system of support. And then I realized, and I knew this, that the state just announced that they're not going to give SVAC to 11th grade anymore. So what does that mean? It's going to be given to 9th graders. That means, though, that the assessment that our 9th graders will take in the spring this year will be more of a field test because they have to pilot all those questions again. Okay, so we're not going to set a goal, and I had that little aha about an hour ago driving here. I'm like, I knew that. So just so you explain that it's just like when they started to provide SVAC, we went through a pilot period because they have to test run it. So I don't have any more information than that, but just an FYI. So what are the action steps for this year? There is a lot of wonderful professional learning and committee work happening at the high school. We have a wonderful team, again, that's continuing to build our multi-tiered systems of support that's really balanced between the social, emotional, behavior, and academic piece. There's a focus on continuing to identify Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. The high school is immersed in Act 77. We are working on making sure that all of our students have personalized learning plans, which I'll touch upon a little bit later, and that we are working towards, even this afternoon, we had a professional learning opportunity looking at the proposed graduation requirements and what are all the instructional steps along the way that I'm responsible for to get to that point. We also are going to be creating a continuous improvement plan, and I have a team of people that are going to be, some of which are sitting in this room, are going to be helping with that. And it will be linked to the district plan, but it will be based on our data and our needs, and it will help create what kind of professional learning we need moving forward. So, Mr. Payne and I.
So, and I just want to make one editorial comment. Laura was saying that they're moving the SVAC to the 9th grade. So I have an 11th grader who's happy with that and a 9th grader who is not. So at this point in the presentation, we talk about what resources, and I've had board members ask, what resources do you need to support your goals as you move forward? Especially since we'll start doing budget work here in the next month. This board has always been supportive of, and we appreciate the time that is set aside for teachers to do work. Much like today, we had a half day at the middle school and high school. Students were dismissed at 11:15, and teachers were able to have a presentation from Laura and Melissa Senecal around proficiency-based learning. They were able to do some work around argument writing across all subject areas. And so we appreciate the time that is built into the professional calendar for teachers to have that. The other piece is that it is time that even on half days and full days for PD is not sufficient, and so you must pay teachers to lead committees in the various initiatives you have, whether it be PBIS for behavior and social skills, whether it be PBL to meet the personalized learning plans and graduation proficiencies. And so, and I think it's money well spent Laura can speak to it much more in detail, the hundreds of hours that was spent this summer doing really good work and pushing the district along as far as what we will be teaching kids and how we will be assessing them. So we would just ask that there would be continued support from the board for those two things, and we would appreciate that.
We are more than happy to take questions. Oh, I'm sorry, the last slide. Oh, I just gotta do one more quick little update. I'm very sorry. So these are the assessments that the state has just released to us within the last month. One is that it will be 9th grade instead of 11th grade, taking SBAC in the spring. That the kneecap science is now not a Vermont assessment anymore, and they are still building. It's not completely built yet. It's a science assessment field test that will assess the next generation science standards, which we've been teaching to for the last 3 years. And finally, Action 3, there will be a statewide physical education assessment that will be built into an accountability system. And it will be implemented this spring. And now we will take questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just get a chair over here.
I'll start.
Okay.
Just
The high school scores that you showed us are roughly equal with the rest of the state, or approaching the statewide average. And the middle school is below, but what I'm wondering is, do we have a problem in the elementary schools of the quality of education where the kids are coming here to the middle school and they're not ready for the work?
So something we highlighted earlier is one of our focuses the last couple of years has really been at the collaborative time, not only that we spend at the district level, getting really good at looking at data and identifying where we need to put some supports in place. Definitely celebrating what we're doing well, but then where we need to put supports in place. And I gave an example about, we realized that when we looked at the whole district trend for 5th grade math, that was a focus that we needed to identify, and we need to make sure that we're giving good tier 1 supports there. So as you were looking at that, we've been really analyzing this data to find out where we need to provide instructional supports. We've also, as Mr. Payne referred to, have spent a lot of time, and teachers, hundreds of teachers, sitting in curriculum groups and team meetings and grade level teams, making sure that the curriculum documents you see on the website, that they understand it, making sure that they know that what is their role, and making sure that children are ready for the next level. And that's been an ongoing piece. So we're definitely looking at this and identifying where we need to target our supports.
Dave, you had a question.
Yeah, I did actually, and then you can answer the question. But I did have another question. Just looking at the numbers, and I appreciate the fact that you're not just focused on the numbers, but on what the plan is moving ahead,
Yes.
and sharing that with us too. But looking at the numbers that were on the first slide for grade 11, or the first set of slides for grade 11, I'm not sure, and they're so small, I'm having trouble reading them, but it looked like they didn't match the numbers that you were then showing later for MAUs.
On the beginning pieces?
Yeah, so the math number that was presented for grade 11 was
Oh, yeah.
a number that appeared to be different from the number that you showed us at the end.
So you might have caught an error that we didn't catch.
Okay.
So thank you very much. So we're going to back to that.
So maybe next month you can
Yes,
share
absolutely.
with us, yeah.
Yes,
And then my
thank
other question was about the science kneecap that was
Yes.
taken last spring.
Yes.
Will we see the results for that test at some point?
So the kneecap science results are
Last spring's kneecap.
last spring. So so yes, we can come back just like we did last year and share the kneecap science. You just need to remember that kneecap science measured Vermont grade level expectations, and we are 3 years away from teaching to those standards. So we are more than happy to come report that, but I want you to know that piece, that we're 3 years into the shift to assessing this
For
piece.
different
But
set of
absolutely, yeah,
standards,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Dave?
Could you elaborate what the physical education assessment would be?
Wow, well, I can tell you, we brought the physical education teachers together this afternoon. So we knew that the state of Vermont was looking at that. The state of Vermont really wants to have an accountability system that's well-rounded, that looks at the whole child. And I attended, I was invited to attend, there were 2 of us last year that were invited to attend a state, help give us input session, and so we were with many people from Southern Vermont, and they had many indicators that they were looking at around the room. And there were a couple that were related to physical education and then health. And just in that meeting, there was a lot of conversation that was the direction that they were interested in going. And so I wasn't surprised when I saw it, but it all goes back to, we have to teach to the whole child. And we want to make sure that when we're looking at assessment data, that we're looking at well-rounded assessment data. And so that is my current understanding of why they're moving that direction. And it sounds like they're leaning towards the FitnessGram, which is actually a normed assessment tool that our district is already familiar with. That's all I got right now. But I will keep you informed.
Are there other questions? Yeah, Leon?
Is this data supplied to you by the state, or this is what
Yes.
you supply to them? I mean, and so,
Which, can you tell me what you're referencing?
well, the attendance chart.
The attendance comes from our own source in Plant Campus, and it comes from the board presentations you get, and it was an average.
Right, it was an average of all the months that were presented to you last year, throughout the year, to all the board meetings
So that's
on
why-
enrollment data.
That's why I asked the first question, because if it was coming from the state, I was wondering why
no.
North Bennington wasn't on it.
No,
That's all.
Laura, is there have you made any comparisons between those kids that, for instance, last year were in the 6th grade and this year are in the 7th grade, to see how that particular cohort moved ahead or didn't move ahead or anything? We're not talking about the same group of kids when we're talking in these tests. We're talking about different groups of kids. What I'm talking about is the
Yeah.
same kids.
Right, so we really are trying to focus, and what we're still being encouraged to do by the state is to look at our current data and to dig deeper into it, and they're really asking us not to make those comparisons yet.
and there really hasn't been enough aspect data to look at cohort studies, because you really would only have that one year, which doesn't give you really a significant.
But it would give you some indication. In other words, if we saw those kids that were in the 6th grade last year and the 7th grade this year, and we found that their scores had either gone up or down, or whatever it would be, it would give you some indication as to whether the programs that you have in place are working, wouldn't it?
I think that our measures of academic progress, our MAP testing, which is nationally normed, is really closer to what each child is doing, and we do those 3 times a year in benchmarks, so it's a much closer monitoring system and much more detailed than the summative test, the big aspect test at the end of the year that's not really as significantly reliable as the testing and MAP that we do from year to year. So we do monitor that data from year to year always.
Sure. One other question. In terms of how our students rate, are there any comparison figures that would relate to schools in an environment such as we're in? In other words, if we took kids from Bennington and we took them up to Chittenden County, that might not be 100% fair comparison. Is there any way that we can take a look at kids from economic, social communities that would be similar to ours?
So I'm going to read you, what I have in front of you is the memo from Rebecca Holcomb, and there's a little piece in here that speaks to what you were just referencing. It says, the relationship between strong academic skills and financial security and well-being is stronger than it's ever been, regardless of whether our students are headed to careers or college when they graduate. Tests don't measure everything that matters to a happy and successful life, including our ability to participate in democratic life. But there is no path to prosperity for students who don't master. But there is no path to prosperity for students who don't master reading, writing, and mathematics, said Secretary of Education Rebecca Holcomb. We were disappointed to see those score declines. The achievement gaps between our vulnerable youth and students with greater privilege remain, and in some cases were narrowed. But this was largely a result of score declines for more privileged groups. As we work to implement more personalized learning and flexible pathways, we need to make sure we continue to challenge and engage all, which is in bold and underlined, our students, while providing extra support for our more vulnerable children to thrive. And we need to support our schools and teachers as they figure out how to support better learning outcomes. So that was in reference to that very question.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Dave?
Yeah, just at the, sort of the school level, are there any wider implications for the scores that we have? And I'm thinking back to the previous regime, No Child Left Behind. Are there funding implications, for example, is there title funding that either we get or don't get for certain scores, or are we at risk of being penalized in some
No.
sense?
I'd actually say that the Every Student Succeeds Act has gone a completely different direction than the No Child Left Behind. That was kind of punitive. And so some of the features of No Child Left Behind, it sort of had to run its course until it expired. But there were many things that were not really evidence that they were working. So some of the shifting has changed, specifically to Tim's question about schools of different needs. They really have aligned better the needs of each school to give them more funding to be successful instead of the other way around as a punitive measure. So it really, there have been some shifts, and just this year that are really not totally clear yet, but some of the services that they found that were not evidence-based, we are not able to do those anymore. Like we used to be required to hire outside people to tutor students. It was called Supplementary Educational Services, SES, and we're not allowed to do that anymore. So there have been really significant changes from the Agency of Education and how those funds can be used. But in general, we have fared very well in our Title I and Title II allocations, partly because of our great leadership.
Thank you. Leon?
In looking at the scores and things, and we asked the question saying, what if we can do to support these things? Are we not looking at what we need to do and adjust our curriculum approach to teaching the kids in terms of the exposure, for the amount of exposure they're getting in the language and math area? In terms, if I look at the curriculum and they get the same schedule, we have the same pattern, but then we're saying, well, we're gonna try to improve with the teachers, why not double the amount of requirement for the students in that same group in the day? You know, they can have English in the morning, English at night, or English at the midday, all math. You know, we're saying do something out here than to say this is what our schedule look like all the time, and then we're now trying to get the teachers to constantly do something if kids need more time and need more exposure, or need a mixture of exposure with higher level kids, with some other kids, more of a mix to get them all fired up.
So, what I can say is if you look at all the new standards that the state has adopted, they are working together. If I look at the next generation science standards, they reference ELA and math. If I look at the C3 social studies standards, they're linked to the Common Core ELA standards, and so our work lies in supporting teachers in being able to work together, so that, to me, children, exactly what you said, need multiple exposure to a skill, and it can look different in different settings. If an English teacher, and we're working with English teachers to understand how to do direct instruction of argument writing, then we also had conversations with content area teachers to say, where in your curriculum can you support students in applying that piece and being with all their peers together in doing that. So you have a lot of good points in what you said, and I'm hoping that's what we're working on. And we're also making sure, and the state has provided us with some really good guidance about using evidence-based practices. The professional learning the literacy professional learning for teachers, I mean, there's ELA teachers in there, he's got a wide spectrum of teachers all getting the same message, so it's consistent for kids. Children's brains like it when things make sense. So when everyone's aware of what the standards are we teach to, and you understand what your role is, that's actually, in a very simple way, going to help students move forward, and we're trying to provide those opportunities for teachers to figure that out so they can support their students.
Thank you.
I would just add one other thing too, for a concern about the standards. The standards that Laura talks about are set very high by the grade level. I mean, they're very challenging across all subject areas. And so I think that, the message that we've been taking away of our work this year, especially with the literacy coach, is that if you arrive in the 7th grade or the 8th grade and you are not reading and writing at your grade level, in the past, we might simply have said, we're going to go give you remediation until you catch up, whatever that means. The problem with that is that every year the standards continue to be raised, and you're never going to catch up. So the challenge as we talk to, supports like Laura and Melissa and the trainers that come in is, as a school, you have to do both. You have to provide remediation for kids who need it, or interventions for kids that need it, but then you also have to expose them to the things they should be learning in the 8th grade. And I think that's a challenge, but I think also that we've done a lot of good work, and these are the standards we're all going to agree on, and now we got to all make sure that every class a kid goes into is the top-notch Tier 1 instruction that you should expect.
Thank you. Nelson, you had a question?
Yeah, I like to speak about this personal learning program and how it fits into all this. Is it showing any progress at all with more involvement from parents? Because let's say you're teaching them in the school, but when they go home, they're really getting some assistance there that helps them. And the more involved they are, I think the better off. We know ourselves, based on children that have parents helping, that they do much better in school.
Yeah.
So how is that program progressing and working?
So are you talking specifically about the personalized learning plans?
Yeah.
So you had asked me to come back and talk about that tonight, and so I was going to touch on that when I do my report. Is it okay to wait for that part then? Is that okay? Yeah, and I'll remember exactly, but I think I have some information on that.
Okay.
Good. Okay, I think we can,
I have one more
oh, yeah,
question.
go ahead.
And it's sort of loaded, it's not a fair question, but it exists. Today, the Secretary of Education released a statement that schools need to start cutting staff, reducing staff to match our student load. If that became a mandate from Montpelier, because you never know what those people are going under the Gold Dome are going to do, if they mandated a percentage cut, what would that do to us and to our activities and how well we're going to do in the future?
I think that's a nice question to leave hanging in the air at budget time. That will be partly for you to discuss.
Very, very good. Yes.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, it relates to the
Yeah.
report.
Yeah.
So, a request was made for the Title I needs assessment plan for this issue, and so now I understand why I got the Hill, or we got the Hill for literacy report, but what I'm confused about, so is this the plan for
That's just
literacy?
the needs assessment.
Okay,
that we
so
completed last year.
that's not, okay, so is this
So we
is
used
this
the-
Title I needs assessment?
No,
Yes.
so it's a needs assessment that we use to build our plan. It could be a needs assessment that we use for title funding. It could be a lot of our federal grants, and the continuous improvement plan
Okay.
ask us to have a needs assessment.
Okay,
So that's
I
an
guess-
example of
Okay,
that.
so I guess I have two questions then. So this is only the literacy part, it doesn't have the math part, but it sounds like there is a plan that is, can I have, so what we were looking for was the needs assessment plan. So it sounds like this was
This is a
supporting
literacy,
document.
this is a literacy needs assessment that the district
Okay,
worked
so
on
is
last
there
year.
a plan?
Is there other action steps? Yeah, and they're linked right in our continuous improvement plan.
And so is the continuous improvement plan on the website?
Is not the whole document. We highlighted the 6 goals in that we report out tonight, and then there are action steps that we all have.
So I guess the question is, can the continuous, so it sounds like, so I have this, which I'm happy to share with everybody, which is Hill's literacy needs assessment. There must be a math assessment somewhere as well that helps.
Let me interrupt this. Do you have a specific question?
Yes,
First
my
of all-
question is, I'm looking for the plan, so it sounds
Okay.
like this isn't the plan.
All right.
And I guess my other question was, can the continuous improvement plans for the SVSU and for each of the schools be put on the website? So, because it sounds like it's very much tied to what
Okay.
we're talking about tonight.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Would you mind giving your name? I'm sorry, I should have asked in the very
Sorry.
beginning.
I'm Jeannie Jenkins, sorry.
Right, Jeannie. Very good.
Yes, it's you, if you said. Yeah, that one.
All right, are there any other comments, questions? I think we can move on then. We'll go down to finance. We need a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
Oh,
Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstentions or noes? Very good. Budget status report for your information. We go down to the consent agenda. Fran,
I'll move it.
you have a second? Are there any questions on the consent agenda? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good. We go down to policy. Leon?
You want to do them all one? No, we do them one at a time, and all of these policies up today have gone through the policy process, has gone through all of the boards, and now in terms of warning, and came back to the committee, we looked at whatever was necessary to look at in terms of any changes, and didn't have any, and if we did, we made the changes out here, so they all for adoption, and I'd like to ask the motion for policy number 1100, fixed access to the
So moved.
move for approval.
The second. Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstentions or noes? Move on, Leon.
The next policy is 3100, transportation, which is the same, we didn't have
We'll
any.
do it.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor signify by, well, any questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed or abstentions? Very good. Leon?
Policy 3115, prevention and conflict of interest in procurement, it's another.
So moved.
And a second? Second. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed or abstentions? Very good. Go down to 4121.
One is travel reimbursement.
So moved.
Any questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed or abstentions?
The next policy is 4327, family and medical leave.
So move it.
Any questions or concerns? All those, excuse me, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed or abstentions? And finally, Leon.
5411, comprehensive HIV bloodborne pathogen.
So moved.
Any questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed or abstentions? Very good. Anything else, Leon?
That's it.
Okay, move on then to Dave.
Yeah, Education Committee, we met 2 weeks ago and heard a couple of presentations, which I'll give you a brief summary of. Dave Barrio told us about some updates to the tardiness policy in the high school building. Essentially, now, if you accumulate enough tardies, they're going to be translated into an absence. And before you, that's after 9 tardies. 9 tardies will count as an absence. Before you get that far, there are a series of interventions that are designed to keep you from being tardy 9 times, with some deterrences, including detentions. So that was done in part to address the issue of tardiness, but also to bring the high school into alignment with the CDC's tardiness policy. So now I think those are fairly consistent. And Dave, I said 2 weeks ago that Dave Barrio didn't need to be here if he didn't want to present it himself. But Laura, if there's anything else that you felt should be added to my quick summary.
Nelson has a question too. I don't know if you want to get
you
the
talked
question.
about CDC having a policy for this. Should we have a policy for this tardiness agreement?
Policy maybe was the wrong word, practice. I'm not sure whether it's enshrined in policy at the CDC or not, but.
This, you want me, the procedure that Dave was updating is well within the guidelines of administrative regs to follow the attendance policy. And so it was a courtesy that he was letting us know what they're doing to try to make students more aware and more effective in meeting the current policy requirements. with tardiness added.
One of the things that Dave Barrio brought up is that there's an ongoing concern that he and the other administrators have at the high school for tardiness in terms of how that student will move through his academic progress if he's not, or she's not showing up on time. So it was very timely for him to bring it to our attention.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that whatever we're doing is consistent, and that's what,
Yes.
when I heard policy, I said to myself, usually that means you're gonna follow the same thing all the time.
Dave,
Yeah.
go ahead.
It's in the regs as well.
On our agenda tonight, the second item there is physics at the high school. This has to do with an AP advanced placement physics class that the administration would like to offer next year. We have offered AP physics in the past. It hasn't been offered the past several years, and there's a teacher now who's qualified and very interested in teaching that next school year. So the administration wanted the Ed Committee to be aware of that. I don't think we need to vote to approve it because it's already essentially part of the program of studies. It just hasn't been offered recently, but in case that comes up. Tim?
I just have a question, Laura, maybe you know. Is the teacher going to attend the AP classes this summer?
He did this past.
So he's done that. So that's, yes.
I would just like to say I am actually currently in a A-level physics class with that teacher, and he is my favorite teacher. He's the best teacher that I've ever had. He's unlike many other teachers. He will change the way that he teaches to help specifically teach it to every student in his class. He's a phenomenal teacher. And I think
That's great. I'm in arrears of not introducing our student representative, Skylar White, who is going to be hopefully joining us and adding to our conversations. Welcome, and we appreciate your being here and look forward to your comments on different things, just as you've done on that situation.
Great, and I'll just say that sort of along that line, we had a similar conversation at the committee meeting about this teacher's enthusiasm, and all seem to agree that it would be a good thing to have happen next year. And then we had we spent some time talking about the band, the marching band, and that was a follow-up to some comments that were made at the beginning of our last board meeting. We had Marge Owen, who's the band teacher, we invited her to attend, and she and Laura shared some of the conversation that's been taking place at the high school to address the concern that essentially the number of students in the band class has in fact fallen to a much lower level than it has been even in the past few years. So the committee asked some questions, and many of them were questions that Laura and her team have already asked and are working on finding answers to, such as, are we seeing a decrease in the number of students in the band program at the middle school? How about at the elementary schools? And to what extent are scheduling conflicts playing a part in the enrollment in band this year, and how has that changed from the past few years? What might be different? So Laura left it that she would be coming back to us later this fall, possibly in November, but
Maybe December.
maybe now December. Okay. And I understand, I think will have already happened, that there was, homecoming has come and gone?
Yes, it has.
And the band?
Played.
Did play.
It was wonderful. Yeah.
Good. Good. And then we also, it's not on our agenda tonight, but I'll just mention that we did hear from both the high school and middle school principals about proficiency-based graduation requirements, and Tim talked about that pilot program that he mentioned earlier, which is happening with with a group of seventh graders this year. That's going to mean a report card that doesn't have number grades or letter grades, but proficiencies and achievement or progress towards meeting those. I think that's about it.
Okay, any questions from Dave or the committee? Thank you very much. It was a productive meeting.
I have
Yes, yeah.
one question and comment. I've had people in the community ask why we aren't steering some students towards on-based online learning. And it came up in relation to the physics class, which already exists. But I went out and looked around on the internet, and I saw courses like, for example, MIT offers an AP physics course for high school students, and if you take it and you complete it and pass their exam, you not only get a high school credit for AP physics, but you get college credit for it from MIT. And I think it's a valid question that people have asked.
So
And maybe we need another meeting
I think
to
it's
discuss that.
certainly
type of-
something would be more referred to the ed committee with the
Yeah.
principal there to make a report out to the full committee, I think.
We can add that as a follow-up to our next meeting. Oh, let me just say, speaking of the next meeting, let's tentatively hold the hour before our November MAU meeting for Ed Committee. I had mentioned a month ago that the Ed Committee would offer an opportunity for the teachers at the high school to give us input, feedback on the principal
Excuse me
search
for
process.
interrupting. We're going to go into that just in a few minutes.
Okay, I know that, but I just wanted to say, since I had said that we would
Okay.
handle that in the Ed Committee, stand by, because we will offer some opportunity to do that. I'm not sure it will be at the next Ed Committee.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to. Okay, very good. Any questions for Dave? All right, we can move on then to the administrator's report. We'll start with the high school.
Oh, okay. So, after I shared at our last board meeting, you had asked for me to come back and share about the personalized learning plan process at the high school. I'd like to first to thank the committee that's been working for a year now to create a process to support the students at the high school. It's myself and Christopher Barnes and Kristen Kimball, Katie Contrada, Mary Jo Kwiatek, Nancy Vanderbilt, Paige Collins, Stephanie Peters representing the CDC, Wendy Klein representing the CDC, and Steve Cogleshell. It's a joint committee with the high school and the CDC because we work together to support the students. So the goal is that by November 30th of this year, all students in grades 7 through 12 must have a personalized learning plan. So what the high school and the CDC staff have done for the last year is to develop a process which we're implementing this year. They did had some steps in place last year as well to get things rolling. So they used the middle school as a stepping stone and created, and I'm going to actually start to here. So what I did, I brought for you tonight, oh, not that one, yeah. I just brought a couple of the templates because you asked to see them. So one is the high school team has differentiated, the high school's differentiated between the different grade level teams, which is similar to the middle school format. They also built their templates based on the visits that the staff made to the middle school at the end of last year when the 8th graders did their PLP shares with their families. So Skylar, since you're here with us tonight, it's very exciting. This is Skylar Hoyt, and he's here with us tonight. Skylar is a senior, so the process for Skylar is a little bit different because he's a senior and he's entering the process a little late in the game, but he is very focused. I've had conversations with him. He was very, very impressed with his aspirations. So do you have a favorite slide?
Personally, I think the third slide would be one of my favorites. It starts saying, based on your interests, create a slide that is a reflection of who you are. I think that's a really an interesting and fun slide for kids to do because it really opens up your imagination. You can see it asks you to use images and text, and so I know for mine personally, I use my favorite quotes from people that I admire. I use images of what I wanted to be and who I hope to become, colleges and everything like that. And I think it really gives kids an insight of who they might want to be or who they plan to be. And I think it really helps show kids who they are.
Skylar? The other shift that's different between the middle and the high school is the use of Naviance. So Naviance is an online resource that we have available to us. Naviance provides Surveys, interest surveys at the last PLP day, they were able to engage in a survey. Skylar, you took the survey?
Yes, actually, I took the survey twice. I take a field study class, which is a class that hopefully you internship under something that you would hope to pursue in your future. And actually, it's the same test where you take it and it will give you 6 different types of learning and how you, like your participation and stuff. And then it gives you jobs according to what your scores were. So the top of the list is going to be jobs that you should be most interested in according to what you like. Jobs that would fit your personality the best and hopefully what you might like doing the most.
So Naviance again is a tool, and the committee is actually looking at, is it possible for us to put the Google, because we're in the same Google format that the middle school students are in. I think the incoming freshmen appreciated that year, that this year incoming, that the platform is really comfortable to them. But the work of the committee right now is to solidify the experiences for the students. So a big portion of the time that we use to meet is to plan what do we want each grade level to have. For example, freshmen had their freshman kickoff where an adult sat with every student and looked at their PLP that's coming in from the 8th grade. That's really important to honor the work they've done and then help to modify that as they start their high school journey. The sophomore class has a reality fair and a sophomore summit that are experiences that they will use the personalized learning plan to document pre and post activities. And there are career events as students start to get older and plan. So the parent piece and the community piece. As Tim and I have gone out into the community the last 2 years and met with community organizations, we're always looking for mentors to come in and sit with our kids during PLP shares. The high school staff, again, visited the middle school when they did their PLP share. The middle school chose to do it a day and invite community members and parents to come in. Last year, the high school tried PLP conferences for 1 grade level. And so again, the parent piece is really, really important. So one of the challenges, and it's a good challenge, is to figure out how, in a really large school, can we find a way to bring staff, students, and parents together to review the PLPs. And that's something that we're currently tackling now.
Nelson, does that help you?
Yes.
Good.
Tells me they're doing.
Laura, is there anything else, or should we move on to middle school, or do?
I'm going to let Skylar's going to share some other things that are going on.
Okay, well, wait till we get down to the, Tim?
You want to go right now?
We'll go in order. I know Tim's on your agenda
Yeah.
next, right? That's that.
So a couple things. I want to start with a thank you. The Lions Club and the Bennington Oral Health Group joined us on September the 27th and provided screenings for our 7th graders. And so I want to thank the community volunteers who came in and helped make that happen, along with our new school nurse, Ashley Walker. It was an efficient process, and we appreciate those folks who took their time to come in. MAP testing, we talked about that a little bit. The middle school took its MAP tests the first week of October, and we're mostly made up as we are catching up with folks who might have missed a day or two. At the end of testing week, we celebrated our annual Harvest Fest. I should say annual, that's a hopeful thing, as we were rained out 3 times last year. It's been extremely dry and sunny fall, and of course it sprinkled on Friday that we held the Harvest Fest. But nonetheless, we had a good time. We had a variety of games. We had the folks who present Birds of Prey. We had a storyteller. We had a school-wide picnic. It's a really nice day for kids. You get to pick interests by your advisory, and we had a very good time. So I want to thank publicly Tracy Galley and Katie Sullivan, 2 teachers who really make this happen for us. And they will be joining us again in the spring as we put on Patriot Challenge Day, which is more of a field day that folks might be familiar with, as advisories and grade levels will be competing in a variety of events. We also, in case moms and dads and families were wondering why there was so much Bennington Fire Department equipment on campus last week, it was the annual Safety Week, and there are activities on a daily basis for grades 6, 7, and 8. I want to thank the Bennington Fire Department for cooperating and supporting us. Their volunteers who spend a lot of hours on campus during that week, making the educational opportunities available to our kids. And really the goal is to keep everybody safe, so I appreciate their time and effort. Friday the 13th was the end of the interim for trimester 1, so that means that a mailing will go home to moms and dads and families soon. Some will be seeing the new proficiency-based report card, so we look forward to those discussions. But just to know, moms and dads to know that they'll be looking in the mail as those interim reports go home. And then Laura already referenced this, but last night we hosted our second parent information night. This is our attempt. We realize that this is change, and folks are going to have questions about this new reporting out to parents on a report card. It's going to look different. And so we had our second informational night last night. It was lightly attended, but we will have a third one on November the 14th. So I would encourage middle school and high school parents to mark their calendars and join us. They're at the middle school. They're from 6:30 to 7:30. We provide babysitting and snacks. It's a very informative 45 minutes followed by some question and answers. And then we'll have a fourth day to be determined still in January. I think that's going to be the highly attended one, as we'll be joined by college representatives and guidance counselors, and we're going to talk about the burning question: how does this impact my kiddo when they get to the high school and they graduate and go off to college, which are good questions, and we'll be trying to answer them.
Thank you very much. Okay, anything else? Any questions for Tim? Now we go to our new student representative, Skylar.
So my
We'll
report is-
get your name card for the next meeting.
Okay. So this month, I'm reporting on some of the larger events that have occurred in the high school. I'm going to start with the sports first. So this last month and recent months, we had two of our cross-country runners, Evan Page and Sarah Umfoot, place very, very well at the Woods Trail Run, which is a very highly attended cross-country meet. Hundreds of schools come. It's a huge multiple-day event. Evan Page placed 18th out of more than 100 kids, and Sarah then placed 19th. So we did very well in that. Football, for the first time in many years, is on their way for qualifying to the semifinals. Field hockey, the same, is also on the way to qualifying. Lady soccer is doing very well. If they continue to win games, they, much like all of our other teams, would be on their way to the semifinals. And the boys soccer, in a change of events, ended up winning the John James tournament this year. We took the title from BBA, which it's been quite a few years since that happened, but that's definitely one of the better things that has happened. Our cheerleaders actually organized part of the halftime show at the homecoming game this year. Usually in previous years it's been just the marching band and they do a little performance. But this year the cheerleaders helped organize with a lot of the fall captains a kind of dance together. They all went out there and performed, and the crowd really loved it. It was very positive feedback from it. You know, people really got excited and involved. There was a lot of phones out taking videos and cameras, so that was really nice to see. Spirit Week is kind of like a Patriot Challenge Day, except more of a week-long thing. It's a week full of activities where each day has a different theme. Kids dress up and kind of participate in just fun events. On Monday was Sports Day, so students would come dressed in their favorite sports attire. Tuesday is Tie-Dye Day. Wednesday was Character Day, which we actually had a lot of really creative ideas. We had one person come as Bob Ross. He had the whole afro and everything. Tuesday was Twin Day, and Friday was Red, White, and Blue Day. At the end of the week, our yearbook staff had taken more than 3,400 pictures of students and at sporting events and all that, so that's a really, really nice thing. On Friday, at the end of the day, we usually have a pep rally scheduled that's meant to get the students hyped up for the homecoming game, but due to the weather, we got rained out, so that's rescheduled for this Friday, October 20th. That next day, that following Saturday, we have the homecoming dance. And this year is widely attended. We had a lot higher student turnout than we had in previous years. From all four classes, there was a lot of kids there. It was really crowded for the first few hours of it. Line dancing is one of the things that kind of goes on there. Not like the usual kick line, but a lot of the more the popular like cha-cha slide and stuff like that. And a lot of the teachers said that was one of their favorite things to watch. It was a real group effort. You know, you didn't have one half of the kids doing it. It was really everybody, which was nice. And Mr. Berry reported back that it was very well behaved this year. Minimum efforts on the teachers' part. Nobody got kicked out this year, so that's a nice thing. One of the upcoming events we have is the music department's musical, Into the Woods. Steven Sondheim, I think I'm saying that right. I hope I'm saying that right. Ticket cost will be $8, which can be bought in Ms. Gabrus' office over at the high school. The dates for that are November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. 7 o'clock on the 2nd, 7 o'clock on the 3rd, and there's a 2 o'clock matinee on the 4th, and then another 7 o'clock show. The musical is double casted, which means there are 2 separate casts. Each part has 2 people playing it, and they have their shows on each different night. There are more than 50 students involved in this. And what the play is, Into the Woods, is it's a cross between a lot of the old child's tales of Rapunzel, Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, and Little Red Riding Hood. So it's kind of a mix of all those with a lot of different characters. And hopefully it'll be a lot of fun. I think it'll be a great show.
I'm sure it will be. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Skylar? If not, I'm just, as I've mentioned it earlier, I just wanted to, in my report, I wanted to mention 2 things. First of all, the storm.
Is the superintendent get a report?
No, I've already changed the agenda while you were away. You're going to get your chance. The storm was very much appreciated, the opportunity to be playing here on the field for the game, and I didn't go to the game, but I guess it was well attended, and it was a spectacular ending. Hail Mary pass, they won. I just wanted, before the superintendent has his report, I did want to mention that I have chosen the people that would serve from this board on the search committee for the new principal, and they are Dave Durfee and Leon Johnson. They will be the official board representatives on the search committee. How that committee will be organized and run, it is up to you. Okay.
Okay.
Go.
All right. Next Tuesday at central office from 4 to 6, the SVSU will be conducting budget workshops for new board members, similar to the new board member workshop that we had last fall. From any time that you can. It is an open meeting. Existing members are welcome to come if you want a refresher on how the budget process works, but we just ask that we do not create any quorums for any of the meetings. So this is open to all 7 boards of the SU that might want to know how the budget process. So next Tuesday, central office, upstairs, conference room from 4 to 6. Speaking of budgets, I'm sure, Ed mentioned a little about it, and I've been hearing from the state, and at a workshop tomorrow where I will hear more of the impending budget doom that we're hearing from Montpelier. Particularly, the term they're using is structural defects in the budget for FY18, which is next year's budget. Because of what was borrowed from the rainy day fund to balance this year's budget, tune of $35 million, plus some other payments that are due to it, the structural deficit they're estimating is anywhere from $45 to $47 million. So that's how we are opening budget discussions at central office right now. As we've already begun the process of looking at budgets before we roll them out to boards. One of the things that Ed mentioned, certainly Vermont enjoys a relatively low student-teacher ratio. In fact, depending on who you ask, lowest in the country, certainly lowest in New England. Secretary Holcomb, as she addressed the superintendents, made the comment that it doesn't appear that the legislature is willing to or has the ability to give much more, and that we should be looking internally about where we make these reductions. So that is a concern, and We've been through enough budget cycles that it's always doom and gloom when we begin budget cycle. The reality at the end could be very different, but I can't imagine at this point how it won't have some impact as we move forward. Tim mentioned the members on the screening committee from the school board. That screening committee will be meeting next week for the first time. They're going to meet next Thursday at 4 p.m. in the high school conference room. They're going to discuss the process. That is being headed for the SU by Director of Human Resources, Ed McTurney, who I've met with and given him his charge to take to the board, to that committee. The screening committee, one of the things that I have asked it to do to make sure the screening committee does at least a public forum on similar to what Dave wants to do to teachers with the MAU Ed committee, that a public forum for what they would like to see in the next principal for Mount Anthony Union High School. So that will be, again, next Thursday, will be the first time to meet. It is the hope that the posting will be up possibly the next day, if they agree on what that posting looks like. Certainly, my instructions to the Director of Human Resources is no later than November 1st for a 30-day opening, and then begin the process after that. So that is the timeline on that. Another thing I want to mention about principal is back in August, when we appointed Laura to be the acting principal, and I said she would get us through the opening of school till October. Informing you tonight that Laura has agreed to remain as acting principal through the end of first semester, which will bring us through January, and we will reassess at that time how that process is going. But I have to say that I want to publicly thank Laura, and I'm very pleased with what she is accomplishing, and still juggling a couple of hats for her. So thank you for agreeing to stay on. I think at this point, continuity with the high school is important. I also wanted to talk to you about Act 46. There will be a public forum next Thursday at 7 o'clock in the high school auditorium. And I was going to discuss at length about that, but I see in the audience that I have the chairperson of the Act 46 Study Committee, and it's always been my philosophy when I can get somebody else to give my report for me, I should do that. So if you wouldn't mind on maybe talking a little bit more about Thursday night and where the Act 46 Study Committee is at this point.
Okay. So, yeah, good evening. I'm Donald Campbell. I am the current chairman of the Bennington, Pownell, Shaftesbury, Woodford Act 46 Committee. North Bennington has not been part of this last version. And probably the important dates for you to know, are that on October 26th, 7 o'clock, Mount Anthony High School, we'll be having a public forum. We'll have some legislators there and a number of different people to talk about Act 46. On November 7th, there's also a vote coming up, and that vote will be whether or not to go along with the merger proposal that the committee and I have developed over the course of the past, well, it's been 3 years, but this particular iteration of the committee's been on it since the spring. If you don't already know, the ballot is out for the November 7th vote. And one of the nuances on the ballot is that, according to the state legislation, directors have to be voted at the same time as the decision whether or not to merge. And it's a little odd. You would think you would vote first whether or not to merge and then vote on directors, but the way the legislation is, you have to do it all at once. And so people have petitioned to be on the ballot, and there's a list of them which I could give you later on if you wanted to. I have a copy of the ballot on my phone, but I didn't bring copies to pass around. But they are available at the town clerk's office if you're interested. So just very briefly, and I don't suppose you folks need much of a primer on Act 46, but the setup is pretty clear. The state passed these around. You've all seen this before. This comes from your materials, and I have that. I'll pass on the audience too. but the state is facing not only budget crisis, but also a lot of student decline. So this is just the Mount Anthony snapshot. It doesn't show all of the schools. Some schools are going up a little bit, some schools are going down, but the overall trend in Mount Anthony is shown in this graph. And in addition to
I don't know how
that,
many you have done, but maybe if some people could share, we could make sure they
okay,
get
yeah.
all the way around.
Yeah, maybe go every other person. But part of the setup here is that, and it's, I would quickly say, the committee and I did not write this law, and so this is not us defending the law, this is us trying to find a way for our community to get the most we can out of this law. But I think it's probably important to realize a little bit how we got here, and this is a graph which shows the average school district size in America. And it's kind of, I wish I had more copies for you, I just have this one. But if you're able to see it, you'll see that there are some very large school districts up in the 40,000 range, and then almost all of them drop off into the kind of 5,000 student range, and then way down at the very end, almost invisible, is the speck of Vermont. I think we're second to last. Montana's truly last, and Vermont's second to last in terms of size of school district. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just what's out there. And so I think this same report also cites a lot of research that shows that according to this research, the optimal school district size is somewhere in the 2,000 to 4,000 student range. And that data is actually cited in the preamble to Act 46. So there's this, I think we'd have to ask the legislators exactly how they got there, but I think you can imagine that we have some of the least consolidated school districts in the country, and we also have very small school districts in relation to what the optimal size is considered to be. This report also, interestingly, shows that as school districts get too big, they begin to become inefficient, and they actually starts to work against you in terms of transportation and people slipping through the cracks and things like that. But that's up around the 15,000 range. So the Act 46 Committee, we were tasked with coming up with a merger proposal. We did that. Again, it was built on the work of 3 years, and this proposal was approved by the Agency of Education in September. And I'll give you just the highlights of it, but I think it's probably important to realize that you are the highlights of it right now. What our committee came up with is that the MAU board structure has worked very well for our community for a long time. So it's difficult to take a number of different towns and get them all in the same room and have them do good governance without having factions created. But the MAU structure, which was established in the 60s and codified in the 70s, is a form of governance that has really served our multiple communities well. So the gist of this proposal is us saying to the state, we know this may not be directly proportional, person to person, but we have found that the MAU model represents our large and small communities together in a very functional way. And we would like this model to be continued, as opposed to something that would be more directly proportional. And this gets a little nuanced, and I don't want to go too far into it because I know you all want to go home, but I'm going to pass around another chart, another page here. And this page is a pie chart, and it shows on the top what it would look like if we were merged by the state in a proportional manner. And this blue section is Bennington, and the small section is North Bennington, Pownell, and Shaftesbury, and then this little dark blue is Whitford. By contrast, the next chart shows what would happen if the state took our recommendation, as written in the merger proposal, and created a merged governance structure that used the MAU model. And that is represented by this. So we had a lot of discussion about whether or not that's better or worse, and what the committee came up with is that it really serves the community well, serves Bennington well as the outlying communities, to have a structure that doesn't give any one town all of the power. So if the state was to come down and to merge us on a directly proportional manner, which is kind of what Act 46 seems to be saying, Bennington would have a 57% of the vote. There'd be some weighting that would give Bennington essentially a veto-proof majority. And what the committee feels is that there's actually been a really nice balance of opinions and priorities and whatnot that's played out in this structure. So the smaller communities are not so underrepresented that they feel they have no voice and therefore kind of advocate for the process. Instead, if the smaller communities got together, they would actually have more votes than Bennington would. So that's probably the most important thing about this proposal. There are a lot of other pieces to it, and you're used to things that are down in the weeds, but this is really pretty down in the weeds. So we've done a little bit of a summary sheet. All of this material, by the way, is available on the SU website. But this summary sheet lays out essentially 5 points about this merger proposal that we would like you to know. This is the committee's perspective. This is not the SU's perspective. The SU's has been neutral on all this, but the committee came up with these 5 points as being what we would like you to know. Number one, that governance merger is happening. The state of Vermont's made it very clear that some form of governance merger is going to happen. And as I say, we know that they've already accepted a body of evidence that would suggest a school district of 2,000 to 4,000 as being an optimal size. But we would like to try to work our local preferences into that merging. Number two is the point I just mentioned, that the proposed MAU board-style structure gives all communities, big and small, a strong voice. And so we were proposing that the representation for this unified district would have 4 directors from Bennington, 2 from North Bennington, 2 from Pownell, 2 from Shaftesbury, and 1 from Woodford. North Bennington will not be voting on the merger proposal, but they will still have directors for what is now your gang, the District 14, and they will have to recuse themselves from all pre-K through, for all non-high school, non-MAU votes. The third thing is that we've built extra protections for the smaller schools into this plan. And contrary to some of what you've heard out there and maybe read on the internet, the state default is to say that no school can be closed for 4 years. We've increased that to 5 years. And then we've also built in that for this unified district board to close a school, there would have to be a supermajority vote, so a 75% vote. And that vote would have to be taken over 2 years. So it couldn't happen all at once. If one vote happened, a year would have to pass before the second vote happened. The idea there is that it's a much higher bar to close small schools, and it slows the process down a little bit so that cool heads can prevail if that's what's necessary. The fourth point is that the committee has, and this one may puzzle some people. We don't know the details of this one, but the committee has, through its merger proposal, requested that the new unified district consider some form of inter-district school choice, so that you would have the ability, some ability, not a guaranteed ability necessarily, but some heightened ability to be able to send your child to a different school within the district if there was some, if you wanted to. So say your student is not, your student's in Bennington and you work in Williamstown and Bennington's not working out so well and Pownell's got some space in the class, you're driving right by, there would be an easy way of doing some sort of inter-district choice. There are a lot of There's a lot of problems to be solved, transportation and class size and all sorts of things, but let's not problem solve that now. Let's just say that this is something that the committee felt would be good for the citizenry. And then the fifth thing, and intentionally last, is 4 years of educational property tax incentives, and that's 2 cents, 6 cents, 4 cents, 2 cents in over 4 years. We in this handout offered a little demonstration of what that would look like in the first year. So, for example, Bennington in the first year with the incentives, the tax rate would go down 7 cents. If it weren't for the incentives, Bennington's increase would be 1 cent in the first year. These are projected, carefully worked by our consultant from the existing data, but I think they're just representations to give you a sense of what the impact would be. I don't think anyone would guarantee these numbers, and especially not with what may be coming down from the Agency of Education and the legislature in terms of budgets. But these incentives are not insignificant. So for Bennington alone, to see the same impact as we would have in the first year from these incentives, we would have to cut our school budget by $1.4 million. So that would be a big cut. Granted, that's the biggest cut, and it's only the first year. But the point is that these incentives are a fair amount of money, and the state is giving them out to try to help communities feather these mergers, but they're not giving them out easily. There have been a couple of merger proposals that have been turned down because there was not a significant enough merger impact. The last couple of bullets are what happens if the merger proposal doesn't pass, and for the most part, what happens is the committee disbands, and every school, well, the committee disbands either way, and every school has to go off and write a Section 9 report which explains what their plan is. And in June of 2018, the Secretary of Education will come up with a plan and tell people how it's going to be. If the merger district is approved, then the new board will have a year to begin to get their ducks in a row. And on July 1st of 2019, that board will take effect. So that is the short version of it. There's one other piece I have here, and I don't know if these got around to the audience, but I'm almost sure that we don't have enough of these to go around. But this is a frequently asked questions document, and it's pretty granular, as they say. And so if you, it's not the kind of thing I would hand out to somebody who doesn't think about this kind of stuff a lot, but if this group, I would think that might answer some of the questions that you would have.
And these are on our website.
Those are also on the website, yeah. There have been a lot of questions about North Bennington, you know, and whether or not North Bennington was going to vote, whether or not North Bennington was going to have directors, and I think it might be worth just giving a very brief explanation that North Bennington just didn't fit into any of the merger proposals that were open to us because of their desire to have choice. And so in the end, the agency of the Secretary of Education herself decided that we could go ahead and take this vote without North Bennington. North Bennington would not be forced to take a vote. And so that's why the 4 communities are looking at this right now without North Bennington. There is a question of directors with North Bennington. And right now, there are no directors on the ballot for North Bennington. Directors did not petition onto the ballot. There was a petition process that happened on very short notice, and so I apologize to anybody that was caught unaware by that. But what will happen is if no write-in candidates for North Bennington are elected, then the new board would have the obligation to select candidates to stand in until North Bennington can have an election for those directors. So it seems reasonable to me that they would elect the people that are currently on the MAU board, but I think that would be up to the new board. So Act 46 is full little details like that. And I don't want to bore you too much, but I've gotten that question quite a lot. Right?
The sample ballot is on the SVSU website and also the town of Bennington's website. So
Right.
if anyone wants to see that.
Okay, I didn't know it was on the SU website, but it is on the town website also, and should be available at the town clerk's office too. So, part of the merger proposal is that, just like we do with the MAU board, that the directors for this new merged district would be voted at large. So everybody voting on November 7th will have a chance to vote for directors in every community. But each community puts up their own slate of directors, and each community has a limited number that can come from that. Again, 4 from Bennington, 2 from Honolulu, 2 from Chapter 8, 2 from North Bennington, and 1 from Woodford. So have I bored you to death? Close? Any questions? No?
Well, if we have questions, we certainly, that date when that general forum is going to be held is Thursday, the what?
Thursday the 26th at 7 p.m. at the high school.
Very good.
And there's also information on the SU, most of this information I've shared tonight is on the SU website. And certainly welcome to get in touch with me through the SU if you have any direct questions.
Thank you.
I do want to thank Don Campbell publicly. No matter where you stand on this issue, the amount of time that you have given as not even an elected member of any of our school boards is very much appreciated. You've done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we can move on then. Are there any other comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second. Third. All those in favor?
Can you, I think we need to state what the reason is, and
I have it right.
I know
Yeah,
it's
we have it
written
right here.
here, the statute number, but could you also tell us what it is in layman's terms?
It's for confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body.
Are we coming back here?
We have to close by coming back here, but there won't be any decision made that will be announced.
Back to adjourn, but no action.
We still have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Once again, there will be no action made public after our executive session.